Hello, welcome back. This is day 1, part 2 of the webinar series that maps to the book Learn MYOB in 7 Days. Today I'm going to show you through the preferences area of MYOB. MYOB software can be set up to suit the individual user's processing habits, and over here if you go Setup, Preferences, you open up this window and you can see you have various tabs that you can access and change preferences to suit the user. System, which accesses rules that govern the behaviour of MYOB. Windows gives you access to choices that change the look and feel of MYOB. Reports and Forms allows you to specify the aging period that applies to receivables and payables reports. Allows you to change email options, and in fact I'll click on it there, allows you to change email options. Banking allows you, gives you various options, how you can select transactions will appear in the bank register, and whether you will make a contact log for all entries. Sales, this allows you to access everything within MYOB that's related to sales. You have the ability to change the credit terms up here. You can see that, and various other options through here. Purchases tab provides options for dealing with quotes, orders and bills. For example, you can choose to be alerted if you have duplicate numbers are used, or if the supplier does not have a recorded Australian business number. See here, if he doesn't have an Australian business number. Purchases preference options are a mirror image of sales preference options. Inventory doesn't actually have very much in it. The inventory tab has just one setting, which allows you to use the standard cost at the default price on purchase orders and bills. Finally, you have the Security tab. This tab allows you to choose from a range of security options. Okay, so one that you can use here, transactions can't be changed, they must be reversed. Allows you to lock a period down. Allows you to have automated online company file confirmation. Now, you may notice on the right-hand side it says here system-wide. So if you make the change and it says system-wide, it will affect all users. If, however, you make the change on this one where it says prompt for data backup when closing, that change will just be for your user preference. Okay, so System, Windows, Reports and Forms, Banking, Sales, Purchases, Inventory, Security, and I found that by clicking on Set. I'll click there, OK. Setup, Preferences. That's how I found that window. So, if we go to page 26 of the book, we're going to go through an actual exercise. Now, I think the Preferences section is, if you read through it, you will understand it, so I've not spent too much time on it, but I want to click on Setup, click on Preferences, and exercise 1.2, go to the Setup option on the menu bar and select Preferences, then select the Banking tab, and then check the boxes besides the following. Okay, so make a contact log entry for every check, make a contact log entry for every deposit, make a default check is already printed. Okay, and I want you to untick this one, display pay rather than memo in register. Okay, I think the other ones are self-explanatory. Now we're going to move across and click on the Sales tab, and we're going to select the following boxes. Warn if the customer has an outstanding credit before applying a payment. Where is that? That's already there. Make a contact log entry for every sale. There, we'll tick on that one. Retain original invoice number for back orders. Yep, it's ticked. Retain original invoice number when quotes change to orders or invoices. If credit limit is exceeded on sale, select Warn and Continue. So that is actually ticked there. If credit limit is exceeded on sale, and we've got the option there, Warn and Continue. Okay, and it says we want to uncheck all other boxes. So I don't think we had, yep, I think that's perfectly fine. And you'll see the image there on page 28, figure 1.31. The next preference option we want to change is purchases. So I'm clicking on purchases at the top here, and I have various boxes I want to select. Warn if the supplier owes me money before making a supplier payment. Yep, that's ticked. Make a contact log entry for every purchase. Yes, that's ticked. Retain original PO number for on-back orders. That's ticked. Retain original PO number when quotes change to orders or bills. That's ticked. Delete quotes upon changing to and recording as an order or bill. That second last one there. And then this very last one here. So again, I think we've ticked all of them. Now, did we have that one third from the top? Retain original PO number when quotes change to order or bills. Okay, I've missed that one. Okay, so the last four should be ticked. Then there's a space, and then that one there should be ticked. And the second one should be ticked for purchases. Okay, a little bit confusing, so I'll just let you see that screen for a few seconds. Read through them. They do make sense. Hopefully they do make sense. Then we'll select the Preference window, Security tab, the very final tab. And we'll choose the option, Prompt for data backup when closing, check company file for errors before backup process, and we'll untick this one which says Warn before recording post-dated transactions. We've unticked that one. So once you've done all of that exercise, click OK. So the next thing I'm going to look at is are the tax codes. So if you pop up here into Lists and then click on Tax Codes, you will see that the tax codes that automatically created when we created the MYOB data file. So if your business is registered for GST, it is essential that you master the tax code area within MYOB. MYOB records GST collected and paid via the tax codes allocated to a transaction. So it's crucially important that these allocations are correct. The tax codes are linked to the general ledger codes GST collected and GST paid. If the correct tax code had been allocated, GST automatically flows to the appropriate general ledger code. I would say that 95% of the businesses I work with need only about 8 tax codes, but you've actually started with a few more than 8 here. So if you actually start on an MYOB data file that's actually older than this, you may find that it's got 15 or 20 tax codes on it. So my suggestion is if the tax code's not being used, if the tax code will not be used, then why not get rid of the tax code? So let's go through and have a look at this. Now, in my mind, these are the tax codes that I like to work with. GST, Goods and Services Tax. FRE, GST free. NT, not reportable. ITS, Input Tax Supply. CAP, Capital Acquisition Tax. GNR, not registered for GST. NEG, GST on a negative transaction. And QUE, Query Tax Code. So let's go through that and have a look at what we've got here. So we have the GST one here, and GST is a goods and services tax, and it refers to the tax applied to most goods and services within Australia. GST free, this applies to items that fall within the scope of the GST system, but that are taxed at a rate of 0%. This includes a small number of supplies, essential food items, educational costs, healthcare, and some other specific items. NT, not reportable. This refers to transactions that don't fall within the scope of the GST system. Examples include wages, superannuation, and intercompany transfers. ITS, input tax supply. This applies to income from financial activities such as interest. CAP. This applies to purchases that are deemed to be assets, such as purchases are listed under assets, not expenses. Your tax accountant will advise you of your business's threshold for deeming a purchase to be an asset. Typically, such purchases are over $1,000. This tax code is not allocated to the sale of a capital item. So if you, for instance, have a car and you sell it, you don't allocate CAP to it, you allocate typically GST to it. Here we have GNR, goods GST not registered. This applies to the purchase from a business that has an ABN, an Australian business number, but is not registered for GST. NEG, we don't have NEG, so this will be one that we create, is GST on a negative transaction, and this is something that you actually have to do in MYOB. It's quite specific to MYOB. QUE is a query tax code. Again, we don't have that, and this is something we'll create. Use the QUE temporary code when you are processing a transaction and you are unsure what tax code you should allocate it to. You would then investigate the matter further, allocate the correct code before processing the BAS. Okay, so it's a matter of just prudently allocating it QUE and then sorting it out at a later date, because sometimes you're not necessarily able to sort something out immediately. So we are looking at the tax codes, and what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at GST. So you'll see GST is sitting here. I'm going to double click on it. And what I have here is the tax code, which is a 3-letter anagram there. Description, so it's a brief description of the tax. The tax type, which is goods and services tax, and the rate, which is currently 10%. So if you had something different, you could change that for 10%. So I know that some people in other countries use MYOB and their GST isn't 10%, so they have a different rate there. You'll see here that the linked accounts for tax is GST collected, and the linked account here for tax paid is GST paid. That one's actually the linked account for tax collected. You just can't see the full thing there. So this is linking accounts, which we haven't really talked about yet, but this is what happens in MYOB, is that the links happen behind the scenes. You don't actually see them happening. So when you allocate GST to something, the GST collected will automatically go to 23,000, and the GST paid will automatically go to 24,000. Okay? And I highly recommend you never change them or touch them. Just leave them be. They'll typically be correct. If you do think you need to change them, make sure you speak to an expert before you do, okay, with those linked accounts. So I'm going to click OK, and we're back looking at the list of tax codes. I should mention that this one here, you'll see that one and that one are dark or bold. They're header tax codes, and this one is WEG, that one and that one added together. Okay, and this one is luxury car tax and GST added together. So, creating a tax code. I'm looking at page 3 of Learn MYOB in 7 days. It's important to know how to create a tax code, as you may need a new code, or one may be deleted accidentally and you need to recreate it. So in this exercise, we're going to create the tax code, query tax code, as we have discussed previously. We are, if you're not in this area, you would click on Lists, Tax Codes. You come to this screen and you come down up to the top here. You'll see the blue cross and you'll click on New and enter the code QUE. Tab through and in the description field enter query tax code. The tax type will be goods and services tax, and to be prudent, we put in 10% here. We link the codes, so this is linked to GST collected. Is that working for me? No, GST collected, yes, it's working for me. And then this one is working, this is linked to GST paid. Use account, and that linked to GST paid. You perhaps could have just typed in 2-3000 or 2-4000. You'll notice here that we have a third field. This is something that is never been used as far as I'm aware, and not really sure why they've kept it in the system. So you don't need to worry about that, and click OK. Now, it may also be necessary to edit a tax code. For instance, if the government changed the GST rate, you'd need to go in and enter a new rate. So what we're going to do in this exercise is we're going to actually come along and see this one here, which is GNR, GST not registered. I find that because it starts with G, every time I go to code something and I go G, it actually comes up with GNR rather than GST. So I'm changing this to save myself time. So click on it. You can click on the blue arrow here, or you can click anywhere on it. Open it up, and where it says GNR, we're going to change that to NRG. NRG. And I will click OK. NRG, not registered for GST. You can see that down there. Deleting a tax code. As mentioned earlier, I prefer to streamline my tax code list, and therefore I delete all of the codes that the business is unlikely to use. So how would we do this? I'm going to pop to the ABN, ABN tax code. I'm going to hover over it. You can see me hovering. I'm going to right-click, and when I right-click, in fact, when I right-click almost anywhere, what pops up is a little menu. This little menu is called a context-sensitive menu. Kind of a fancy name, hey? Fancy name, but it does bring up options that are relative. Think about it, context-sensitive. It brings up options that are relevant to what you're doing. So I'm going to delete the tax code. And voila, it has disappeared for me. So exercise 1.4 on page 34 is about deleting the following tax codes. Let's have a look. INP, so INP, delete. VWH, VWH, delete. EXP, delete. Okay. Fabulous. So we have had a good look at tax codes, and you have some understanding of them there. I'm going to click on close, and now I'm going to look at the chart of accounts. Let's have a look. I'm on page 34, clicking on accounts, and here you'll see the accounts list. This can also be the chart of accounts. So we have the accounts list here. If I click on it, accounts list, you'll see here it is a numerical list of general ledger accounts or account codes. I consider it to be one of the most important parts of setting up your accounting system. It is the backbone of your accounts, and it is the structure upon which all transactions are based. So it's critical to the success of your business accounting system that this is set up to suit your business reporting requirements. The chart of accounts is split into 8 separate areas you can see across the top here in accordance with their grouping. So you're likely to be familiar with some of the terms used here, but some of them, if you're not familiar with them, you can change them to suit your requirements, because this is your business, this is your system, and you need to understand what you're dealing with. So the first thing I want to do is have a look over here at assets. Assets. Assets start, you'll notice that they start with a 1 prefix with a 1. You've got the wording here. You've got the type of asset it is here. And so in some of these assets, they're bank accounts. Some of them are accounts receivable. Some of them is listed as other assets. You have the tax code, an indication of whether they're linked or not, and their current balance. There's no transactions in this system, so there's no balance here at the moment. So what is an asset? An asset is what the business owns. For example, money in the bank account. If the bank account is overdrawn, it will still remain in this area. Also cars, computers, buildings, accounts receivable. The second tab along is liabilities. Liabilities are what the business owes. For example, credit cards, balances, bank loans. And you can see here the GST collected and GST paid. The third tab along is the equity. This is the net worth of the business, the part that the owners actually own, as opposed to the part funded by the borrowers, etc. The current year earnings and the retained earnings. Income. This is the money received from business activities, whether selling goods or providing services. This is also referred to as revenue. Cost of sales, if I pop here, cost of sales. Cost of sales. Cost of sales starts with a 5, prefix of a 5, and this is the cost of selling goods or services. For example, if the business sold balls, the cost would also include the purchase price of the ball plus freight. This is also known as the cost of goods sold. So I typically refer to it as COGS, so I might do that throughout the webinar, refer to it as COGS. The next one along is expenses. General business expenses not directly related to the cost of providing the goods or the services. For example, telephone and rent or wages. Other income. Other income is income that's not related to the main purpose of the business. For example, interest income. And then finally we have other expenses. This is prefixed with a 9 here, and it is expenses that are not directly related to the main purpose of the business. For example, the home office expenses. They may be legitimate tax deductions, however they are listed separately. You'll notice that there is actually no 8. It goes from other income to other expenses with a gap for 8 for some reason. So we've had a look at that. What we should do is pop back to assets, and one of the things I'd like to show you is if I click on maybe ABN withholding credits, you'll see that I have an option of what sort of asset this actually is. Bank, accounts receivable, other current assets, fixed assets, or other assets. Okay? So when you come to develop your chart of accounts, you should be measuring what's important. So when it comes to income, you should identify what sort of income streams the business actually has and what it needs to generate. You should use plain English. So when it comes to like the name of the bank account, I would prefer you change it to the bank account's name and the account number rather than leave it there as check account, because check account is kind of generic and not that easy to find. And when you look at a transaction, it will reference the account number, not the name check account. I suggest you group things together. So if you look in our expenses, we've got wages here. So it looks like wages should start under the 6,000. You can generate this level of report. You can summarize things by putting headers in. So do we have any headers yet? No, we don't actually have any headers, but I will go through and put some headers in as we walk through. So at one level, you can actually see that this is a second stage level. That is a top level there. And that means that all of these group in and subtotal into assets. So by summarizing, it means we can see things at a higher level. If MYOB has created lines that you're never going to use, then get rid of them, remove them. Remove the clutter. If you're working on a different data file that's already been in existence for some time and has lots of zero balances that are never going to be used, get rid of them. So over here on liability, quite a number of taxes were created that probably would never use. Your accountant may send the information over to you in an alphabetical order. You, however, do not need to adhere to this. There's no point, if you're looking at your expenses, to have everything sitting there in an alphabetical order. Far better for you to have it grouped into promotional costs and have advertising and marketing and social media costs listed together under promotional costs rather than listed in an alphabetical order. It doesn't give you any idea of how much you spent on the promotional costs. I also suggest when you're numbering these that you allow for growth. So you can see here we've actually got 1,000 numbers available to us between wages and other payroll expenses. So exploring, we're going to move on to page 40, exploring a general ledger account. And I'm popping over to assets, and I'm going to click on which one is it? The bank account, the check account. So I'm here on the check account and I'm going to double click and have a look at it. Now you'll see at the top left hand side it says header account and detail account. The general ledger account can be either of these. However, transactions can only be posted to a detail account. Transactions can only be posted to a detail account, and the header accounts are used for grouping and subtotaling detail accounts. And on the MYOB screen, they're always shown in bold, as I showed you before. Okay, so over here in the center area, you'll see the account classification. It's classified as an asset. You'll see a drop-down balance here, as I mentioned before. You'll see an area to put the account numbers in, and I've got 1,000 sitting there. You'll see the account name sitting there, and you can go in and change that. And you'll see an option to put in an opening balance there. I suggest you do not put the opening balance there. Do not put the opening balance there because it is always editable, and that means that someone can come along at a later date and change it. The opening balance is far better to be entered as a journal entry, not in that field, because someone could come along 10 years later and stuff you up. You'll see at the very top here we have various tabs, and I'm going to click on the Details tab, and you'll see if I click on the Details tab, it says it allows an area for description, so I could actually type in there if I wanted to. It has a tax code allocation, and the default tax code allocation is not reportable for check account. And it also tells me what linked accounts are here. So customer receipts, paying bills, check payments, what linked accounts are. Then I click on the third tab along, which is banking, and I highlight 555. I'm just going to put in the BSB number for this actual bank account. So it's just a make-up one, 44. Let's see if I can get all the fours right. 4454, hope 545. And no matter how you try, you'll only allow you to do capitals. So you put in the business name there. And that means I've actually got my banking information there. So that's actually part of exercise 1.5. The final tab is the History tab, and this allows you to see the current year history and the last financial year's history on this account, but nothing has happened on this account, so there's nothing there. You can also see the year-end adjustment down the bottom here, and I will just highlight to you that you could also see the current balance up here on the right-hand side. You could see the current balance there. So I'm going to click OK. And we are going on to exercise 1.6 on page 44. We're going to create a new general ledger account. Now, owners of a small business frequently pay for business items out of their own personal cash. Now, you should try and avoid this, okay? But if you do, the transaction still needs to be recorded in your accounting software. So I recommend micro-business clients, rather than handling petty cash, it is a good idea to set up a loan account in liabilities to allocate any accidental personal expenditure through the business or expenditure on the business. This reduces the hassle of dealing with petty cash and enables you to allocate a personal portion of the business expense. I typically reconcile my own personal loan account quarterly. I calculate what money I have withdrawn from the business and process that as a wage to myself, reducing the loan account to zero. In this exercise, we will set up the loan account for this purpose, as shown in the image 1.40. So, I am in the Accounts Command Center, and in the account list, I'm going to go to the top left-hand side, and you'll see the green cross up here, and I'm going to click on that to create a new account. I'm going to select the option which actually has come up by default, the detail account. I'm going to select the account type as credit, so it says here account type. I'm going to choose credit card. And you'll notice that when I chose that, the actual account classification changed. I'm going to type in, it says here 2- and then I'm just going to type in 9 and tab through, and it actually automatically fills out the last 3 digits there. And then I'm going to enter the account name. So it's going to be loan dash and then the owner's name. So if your name was Sam, you would put that in. Whatever your actual name was, you would actually put in there. Okay? Leave the opening balance as 0. Remember, I don't like you putting anything in the opening balance there. Click OK. And it's done. So what we also want to look at on page, so what we've done there is we've created, you'll see over here in liabilities, you'll see here loan, owner's name, and the credit card there. So the next thing we'd like to look at is editing an account. If the names of the general ledger account that appear in MYOB AccountRight are unfamiliar to you, you can edit them. So I suggest to my clients that they use the account numbers as the names for their bank or credit card accounts, as these numbers are usually the reference that appears on the transaction document. So popping over to Assets, double click on the check account, Profile tab has come up, and what I'm going to do is change this. I click on account name and I'm going to change that to 4444 4454, and I'm going to click OK. Fantastic. Fantastic. So there I have ANZ, and I actually have the account number there. So frequently, as I said before, when you look at the bank statement, it has that account number on it, and this helps you sort that out and see it and identify it quickly. I also suggest to my clients that they change the name of their payroll liabilities accounts to PAYG withholding, as it aligns with ATO terminology. So let's go to click on the liability tab. So I clicked on the liability tab, double click on 2-2000, and see here it says 2-2000. I'm actually going to change the numbering there to make it 2-2100, 2-2100, and I'm going to change the name to PAYG withholding. And I'm going to click OK. A small business would normally have at least 2 payroll liabilities, superannuation liability and PAYG withholding. For management and reporting purposes, it's advisable to group them together in a header called payroll liability, as shown in figure 1.41, which you'll see in the book. which you'll see in the book on page 47. The two detail sub-accounts will be indented and sit underneath it. Because we've created a header account, they indent automatically. But if it's necessary to indent them, select Account and click on the drop-down figure button at the bottom of the window. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a header account. Go up to the top. I'm looking at exercise. Oh, well, I'm looking on page 47. I'm clicking on New, and I'm choosing 2-2000, and I'm tabbing through, choosing Payroll Liability. I'm typing in Payroll Liability, and up the top left-hand side it says Header Account. And that's critical that I choose that, Header Account. Account number 2-2000, account name Payroll Liability, and I click on the Details tab, the second tab in, Details tab, and see this option here when reporting, generate subtotals for this section. Click on that. Click OK. And you can see my Payroll tab is underneath there. So I'm going to click on Down. That will now subtotal into my Payroll Liability one there. What we're now going to do is create another account. This is to sort out our full payroll as I've been talking about before. So I'm going to click on New, leave it as the Detail Account option, select the account type Other Liability. I'm going to type in the number 22, and I'm going to choose Superannuation Liabilities, and that click OK. So now we have Payroll Liability, the total, and underneath it we have PAYG withholding and superannuation liabilities. So on page 49 I go on to talk about a clearing account, which is a bookkeeping mechanism for managing the movement of transactions within an account, and some of the accounts are simply called clearing accounts. So if you look at on the assets, electronic clearing account, payroll clearing account, but you also have trade debtors, trade creditors, GST collected, GST paid, and PAYG withholding. So those are other clearing accounts. The balance of the accounts, of the clearing accounts, should constantly be coming back to zero, and I reconcile them to a zero balance, those ones that I've mentioned. So you can read more about that on page 49. But we're going to talk about initially PAYG withholding. So with your PAYG withholding, if I click on liability and here is my PAYG withholding, what happens is the PAYG withholding account gradually accumulates in this account as payroll is processed. So when it's paid to the ATO, the balance of the PAYG withholding liability account clears it to zero. So think of it as a bucket that fills and then empties. Every time a PAYG payment is made to the ATO, you need to reconcile the PAYG withholding liability account to a zero balance. Okay? If the balance does not reconcile to zero, then you should understand what's in there. You should be really clear and you know what's in there. So, we've finished looking at the, I'm going to click on close, finished looking at the accounts command center here, and what we're now going to do is go over to the far right hand side and click on the card file area. Card files command center is one of my favorite areas. It is a simple customer resource management tool. Full contact details of customers, suppliers and employees and other parties can be stored here, along with other customized information. So, how to typically set up a customer card. So if I click on card file and then click on card list, you'll see that there's nothing here yet, but you'll see the tabs customer, supplier, employee, personnel. So let's just jump straight in and create a customer card. So if you're looking at page 50, you'll see we'll click on Customer. We're going to click on New. And this is a customer card. It's come up blank. And we're going to have company here. And the name is the Fit Shop. So I'll type that in. Tab through. And the address is 1 Fit Lane. And at Fatville, these dreadful names, Queensland, 4, I don't know what number that is, just made it up. Oh no, it's 4,000, sorry. It is 4,000. Okay, and then on the other side we have phone numbers. And I can simply copy that phone number because it just changes by 1 digit. And then we have a fax number as well. And then we have an email address, which is fit@fitshop. So you get what I'm doing. I'm just kind of filling in the information for this. And we've got .com and filled in the wrong name. Okay, fabulous. Oh, look, I'm just going to give her a capital. And so you can see that there's spaces on the customer card, so I'll actually have to pop those in. So I'm doing that just to be neat and tidy, popping in those spaces. Really up to you whether you want to do that. I like to be quite precise when I put this information in. So you can see there I've captured just the general information about this particular customer, their name, location, address, etc. Then if I click on the next tab, it has the card details. And I could click here to actually insert a photo. I don't think I have a suitable photo I could insert. I can click here to put notes in here. So I can put in here, not open on public holidays, whatever's relevant that I want to put in there for them. I have various options down here, which I'm not going to go through yet, but it does say custom field number 1, and I'm going to type in Spencer because Jane's husband's name is Spencer. And I'm also going to put in her tea preference, tea white with 1. So we've tried to identify her and know what she likes by using that. So the custom lists, which we've got here, they allow you to generate 3 separate defining lists of data. So you can then select the list to generate reports for management decision-making purposes. For example, custom list 1 could be renamed age group, and associated lists could be called baby boomers, Gen Y and Gen X. The custom fields here, they allow you to enter a single piece of information in the field, such as the contact's assistant, or what we've done, maybe that's an assistant, and then the T preference. The identifiers, which is here, if I click on that, these are actually all the letters of the alphabet, and they're 1-letter labels that can be assigned to cards. For example, it's common to use the letter N for newsletter and to assign an N identifier to the cards of all customers who wish to receive a newsletter. So a report can then be generated listing the address details of these customers. Okay. So the next tab along, third tab along, is selling details. Selling details. So this particular client, the default sales layout for them is item. and the invoice delivery status is to be printed, and this is just defaulted through. The sales comment, we're going to choose the sales comment. When we deal with them, we're going to say thank you. Down here I have the customer terms information. So I am going to enter the terms, the particular terms for this client. Now I want to highlight something to you. Under Setup, under Preferences, it's saying okay. Let's just make sure that's... So under Setup, under Preferences, under Sales, here under Terms, this is actually where you can set up the default terms for everyone. Okay, that's where you set up the default terms for everyone, but it's for all new cards created, not existing ones. So click OK, and if I go back to my card list, and looks like I've lost my card, so I will just stop and recreate that. So that was a little glitch. We are back here, and the selling details, we have the customer terms here, and in a given number of days, discount days 0, balance due date 7, and discount for early, the rest of these are left as 0. Okay, up here we can put an ABN number in, putting an ABN of 55555555555. And ABN branch. Now, if you were like a store, like you were a Myer and you had various branches, maybe one in Carindale and one in Brisbane City, then you would have different branch numbers, okay? So that's when you use the different branch numbers. Click on Payment Details, and we're going to select Payment Method. Click on the drop-down option here. We'll select Visa. It opens up these various fields here. And we're going to put in the last 4 digits of the Visa card there, and we actually have notes there as well. And we also have the options here of contact log. This is where we can put information about the person if we want to record some information or some reminders, which can help with debt collecting. We also have the jobs area here, which lists the various job options. And finally, a history area, which lists everything that we've done with them over the last 2 years. When they were a customer since, last sale date, last payment date, days to pay, biggest invoice amount, biggest accounts receivable amount. Okay, so click OK on that, and we have, so if we click on all cards, we'll see the fit shop, and if we click on customer cards, we'll see the fit shop. So setting up a supplier card. So click on supplier card, click on new, and I'm going to make sure up the top here it says card type supplier, and very, very similar to the customer card, except that here we have buying details and we have payment details. So you remember the other one, it had selling details, here, sales details and selling details. So if we click, what are we going to call this? We're going to call this Fitness Equipment Sellers. Fitness Equipment Sellers, and over here we're going to fill it out on the buying details. We're going to choose an item layout, and we're going to choose the option We Appreciate Your Business. The screen image actually has an expense account allocated, but we haven't created that yet, so we won't do that. The payment is due in a given number of days. Balance due 14, so it's due in 14 days there. And over on the right hand side, we're going to put in an ABN number. Brilliant. And so that's filled out. I haven't done this area yet because I don't have expense accounts yet, but that is something that we'll do in future. We'll do at a later stage. Click on payment details, and this is a supplier and this is how we pay them. And then see if I can get all those fours right. 44444. So it's 4444444. And again, we put in here bank account name, fitness equipment sellers, and we put here Green Apple Gym. So when we actually pay them, it says Green Apple Gym. And we're going to click OK. Fantastic. So if we look at all cards, we have 2 cards sitting there, and one under customer and one under supplier. So on page 55, it actually gives you an indication to go and create that card, which we've done, but it also wants you to create a customer card for Tonga Consulting. So we're just going to click on New. We're going to make sure up here that it says Customer, and we're going to call them Tonga. And that's all we're going to do, because actually a card can be very simple. So we're going to click OK. And we won't see it under supplier, we'll see it under the customer. So you may be using an existing data file that has lots and lots of cards. We only have a few here. Now, you may need to delete, combine, or mark cards as inactive. So all cards except for employee cards can be deleted in MYOB when there's no transactional history against it. For example, a card may be created and then not needed. So any card can be made inactive, and this option is useful for cards that cannot be deleted, such as employee cards or cards that you don't want to delete for some other reason. So you can also combine cards. So I'm going to show you how to mark a card inactive. Hover over Tonga Consulting, right click, and then choose the option Mark Inactive. Okay, so that's what I could do. I could also choose the option Delete Card, but I don't want to do that. And down here you'll see the option Combine Cards, and I could combine those 2 cards together if I wanted to. But I'm going to hover there and click Mark Inactive. So that's okay, that's great. So that's fabulous. We've come to the end of day 1. You have, in day 1, you have looked at the Accounts Command Center, you've looked at the accounts list, you've looked at, let's have a look, the tax codes. Remember the tax codes? Click on Close. You've looked over here at the card file, you've looked at the card list, you've seen the various customers that we have there, and you can see the customers and the suppliers. Okay, so that's the end of day 1. Take a rest, make yourself a cup of tea, and we'll be back for day 2 tomorrow. Sensational. Thank you.